Hello, guys. Braxcast time once again. This is the 89th episode of the Braxcast, and this is an exciting one because we've got the launch of the Cursed and the Black Eyed Club in tandem with each other. Of course, bad news for the wallet, great news if you are a fan of the Rippaverse and you have the room in your budget to get in on all of it or even get in on some of it. But before we dive into that, I want to say I had another fantastic live stream last night. I am posting this on Saturday. I do the live streams on Friday nights. Not going to do it for the week of Thanksgiving since I will be traveling. Imagine you guys are going to be spending a lot of time with your family if you are in the States. Hopefully it all goes well. You have a good celebration there. But there's also the fulfillment of Horseman number 2 and Norfolka number 1 as well. And like I said on live stream, probably am going to get to reviewing those in December, but I will be getting those at the end of this month, beginning of next, depending on when they come. And I will definitely be reviewing those pretty soon. But like I said, it's probably going to be after Thanksgiving. So it's probably going to be first week of December when those reviews come out. But look out for those. Instead of talking about Norfolka and Horsemen, I want to talk about the Cursed and the Black Eyed Club. We're going to be starting with the Black Eyed Club. This is, of course, written by Sylvia Saska. Tagan Ilhan and Janez Holland are the artists, with Gilheim Lindberg as the artist for this book. And this is, of course, covering the eclectic playboy Michael Copper. And we've seen him appear in a bunch of Rippaverse stories. Of course, he's got his own section in the Rippazine in the Forest Park Gazette. That's Copper's Gentleman's Tips or Gentleman's Club. If I can't exactly remember what it's called at this moment, but I really love the personality that shines through in his section in the Rippazine, and I'm really excited for that. On that basis, of course, seeing him appear in Alpha Core 1 and Isaac 1 very briefly, but Alpha Core 1, Blood Roof number 1 are his more substantial appearances along with Lillian. And this is going to be one that's taking place in Paris, where he's fighting these Accept heroes called the Hellhounds. So there's going to be a really interesting story. And like I was talking about on live stream yesterday, and I'll reiterate it here, these two stories are going to be 56 pages. And they're going to be delving more into the origins of these characters rather than how they got to Forest Park, which to me is much more interesting. And the fact that these are both called Part 1 really leads me to believe that we're probably going to get maybe 2 or 3 more of issues each for the Black Eyed Club and the Cursed, and they'll probably bring us to how they not only met each other, which is going to be a very interesting thing because they're on different parts of the world, with Michael being in Europe, Lillian being in Japan. So how do they meet and how do they end up in Forest Park? I would imagine as these stories progress in their second, third, maybe even fourth issues, how they may meet and get to Forest Park is going to be told from each of their perspectives. So it's going to be the same story being told from 2 different perspectives, and it's going to give us a lot of insight into how these stories end up, and also insight into the Rippaverse as well. But the Black Eyed Club, we've got this A cover by Kanan White. Cover B is by Gabriel Icano. Yevgeny Sokolov is the cover artist for cover C. And we've got D cover, which is the mass print cover by Kanan White. That's the one that was revealed. And then both A and C, or A and C, these two are colored by Marcos Martin. So hopefully you got through all of that. I definitely do like the C cover right here. I'm sure it's a bit hard for you guys to see, but I couldn't have printed out all of the covers today. I ran out of printer ink just printing out what I did for this episode. And like I said, printer ink costs more than human blood. So I gotta limit what I print occasionally. But these are really fantastic covers. Of course, I am getting all of these covers for the Cursed and the Black Eyed Club. So I will be showing them off physically when they fulfill. And I believe that's going to be around Q1, Q2, 2026. And I think they both are around the same, having sold about 2,900, making around $70,000. They seem to be matching pace with each other, which is pretty exciting. But this is, of course, a little highlight of the art here. We do seem to have a murder here, and this is also true of Lillian's story, because Lillian's story is going to be the fallout from her husband being murdered. But this is just a really fantastic one-piece spread here. So fantastic art. It's definitely got that like noir style. Well, I'd say noir style. I guess this kind of has that noir style, but from what I was commentating is that Curse has more of the noir style, and the Black Eyed Club's got more of that comic style, but they definitely are both pretty dark and gritty. Of course, this is a really dark and gritty scene here. Definitely the one I chose to show off for the Black Eyed Club. But like I said, this is going to be Michael in Paris, being his eclectic playboy self, going up against some ex-Seps. So we're going to see insight into his powers. We're going to see insight into his story. We're going to see just what makes him tick, and also see him probably actually go up against people, which is really interesting because we haven't at all seen them in their appearances really work, or not. They've been working through other people, especially in Alpha Core, and one with Billy Bob Quinn, Galvin, and the grunt that they had, Rob, I believe it's Texas National Bank or First National Bank, whatever it was called, in the very opening scene of Alpha Core. These are all jobs that they orchestrated through people. And of course, they've got this network where they're really trying to be as far away as possible from what they're doing. So they're in the shadows, working behind the scenes. And this is going to be him working more explicitly, actually doing stuff, actually going up against people. So we're going to see him in action as well as with Lillian. And that's the really exciting thing. And then, of course, since he's taking place in France, the Black Eyed Club, and since Curse is going to be taking place in Japan, we're going to see more of the Rippaverse on an international stage. Of course, we've got Cosmic with Zalen, but seeing more of the Rippaverse outside of Flores Park, but still on Earth, is going to be the interesting thing. We had that short little scene in Drescher in Horseman Welcome to Flores Park, but that really doesn't count since he basically moved down to Texas in like the next couple of pages anyway. But anyways, for the Black Eyed Club, or excuse me, for the Cursed, these covers is, of course, cover A by Kanan White, cover B by Anton Tarlov, cover C by Brau Aguirre, and Ronaldson and Marcos Martin did the D cover, which is the cover that was shown off in the Rippaveal. And of course, one of the things that I did make sure to print out was this B cover. This is, of course, Anton Tarlov's cover, and this is winning it for me as the best cover here for very obvious reasons. I can think of at least two why I would cite this as the best cover. But like I was saying on live stream, this is just like such a mix of like the sensuality and threateningness, or I would say the violence of this character that Lillian can have, right? And this is something that I love in like any sort of like good writing, and this is where like a lot of modern entertainment really loses me, where you can't have a character that's like feminine and has these like sexual wiles, and then also being a strong, competent character that can show great violence. Because you see Lillian with her powers activated, you see like a strong man's corpse at her feet while she's getting dressed, and just leads you to the implication that this was like a Black Widow situation. Whether this happens in the comic or not, that will remain to be seen, because if you know anything about American comics, you can very, very often have scenes where they don't appear in the interior pages, but they do show on the cover because it's something that just looks cool, which is, you know, Alpha Core 1, cover B is the best example. Lillian and Ingrid fighting each other doesn't happen in the book, but it just was a really cool thing for Jack Herbert to draw. And that's probably one of the reasons why he got the Great War Separation gig, was because of that cover. But anyways, and again, he should get a Young Isom gig because of his fantastic art, but that is neither here nor there, and I've talked about that ad nauseum. But last thing I do want to show off here is, of course, this art from the Curse. And of course, there are scenes that we see of the murder of her husband. The name is escaping me. They're all like Japanese names. I think it's Roku Ishii, if I'm remembering correctly. She has a spirit photographer friend, and of course you can see this is like a yokai. So if you go, Japanese mythology is called it's called Shinto. That's the Japanese religion, and of course there's tons and tons of folk stories of these spirits are called yokai. I think most of them are bad, some of them are good. I'm not the most knowledgeable on it, but this definitely seems to be like an evil spirit. I believe like if you play Neo, it's all about, a bunch about yokai. There's like a game called Yokai Watch on the 3DS that came out years and years ago. But anyways, so Japanese mythology is very much about these spirits that exist in nature. They'll terrorize or they'll visit villages, and a lot of this goes back to like the medieval period, even before then in Japan. So this definitely seems to be like one of those yokai. So it's going to lean in onto that Japanese mythology, which makes sense. It's taking place in Tokyo. Of course, Lillian is most likely going to be facing up against these evil spirits. She most likely is going to have her powers because of some sort of, Shinto mythology reason, rather than it being like generic magic. So it could be like magic. Magic just encompasses this. So the magic is the reason why the Norse in Yaira's neck in the woods have a lot of their powers. Here we're thinking about Valadan and Takari. Takari is going to be in on the African mythology. So all these mythologies could definitely exist and definitely like empower Excepts, and it's all magic. It has different flavors to it. That's probably what is going to be happening with the Rippaverse. If I'm going to make a prediction right there. But this definitely is an interesting scene. There's going to be a lot of murder, going to be a lot of intrigue in this story here, because this is taking place with a murder. And it seems like Lillian is just like probably a bit of a trophy wife, because her husband is a robotics engineer who gets murdered, and then she has to become this superpowered being that basically gets thrusted into this dark underworld of spirits and crime. And then, of course, she just becomes this cold-blooded, hearted criminal because of that. And I think this is going to be a real true origin story for Lillian. And this is going to be a really interesting one to see, and which is why, since I love both, of the twins that they're writing, and I love when they work together, if I'm going to give a win to one of them, I'm going to give the win to Jen Soska, who is, of course, the writer on this. Crimson Zamora is the artist for this, and Marco Leskos is the colorist for this book. But I am a bit more interested in Lillian's story, because to me, this seems like it's going to be a true origin for Lillian, whereas Michael, it seems like he's already started up things a little bit. He probably already has his powers at the beginning of the Black Eyed Club, and then it's just going to be like starting a story from that point. Whereas with Lillian's story, it's going to be like, hey, this is the true beginning. This is how she became an Accept, and this is what got her into basically the path where she's on that led her to where we see her in ISOM 1, and honestly Blood Roof number 1, since that takes place before ISOM number 1. But all in all, that's really all the commentary that I have on the Cursed and the Black Eyed Club for this episode of Braxcast. Real exciting stuff. Fans are, of course, excited. You've got so much stuff going on with the Riververse, like I said. We've got 2 books fulfilling. We have 2 books released. We still have some more stuff that needs to be released, so look out for Saoirse and Salvage Lethal Force. Those will probably be releasing next month. Those are the 2 things from the Rip Reveal that we haven't gotten yet. So I imagine those things are going to be coming out in December, a last rush for the holidays. And those are going to be really exciting to cover and, of course, to read. Salvage is going to be its own standalone graphic novel, and Saoirse is going to be the beginning of an ongoing series, of course, by Kanan White and Eric July, which is going to be really, really exciting to see. And until I read Saoirse number 1, I won't be able to say if she can be beaten by Mary Sue, which is what John was basically insinuating that Mary Sue could do on the live stream I had last night. But once again, neither here nor there. I'm done with my commentary on the evil dynamic duo for now. Probably not going to be saying anything until their books come out and I can delve into both of them. So be sure to look out for those in the coming months. And of course, we're going to be doing a bunch of Rippaverse reviews for Horseman, or 2 Rippaverse reviews, I should say, for Horseman in Norfolka sometime in December, most likely. So don't look out for it this week because of the holidays, which I hope you guys enjoy if you are in the US, which most of you are. But anyways, long-winded outro is done. Joker is out. Thank you for tuning in to the Braxcast. Be sure to like, comment, follow, and subscribe to keep up with the Rippaverse.